Julia Ann May Williams. I was born in 1929 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and I lived there until I was 32. I'm now 82 and I live there again. And I guess I had my first lessons in tolerance and realizing the worth of other people when I was a very young child. My mother was widowed when I was a year old. And I had a playmate named Laura Raspberry. She was a student at AM&N College for Blacks in Pine Bluff. And she was my favorite person in the world next to my mother. She came at noon every day when she got out of school, and after my nap she took me on a streetcar ride to the end of the line, which was then the coffin factory near Oakland Park. And we could not sit in the front of the streetcar because she had to sit in the rear. And I didn't want to sit in the front without her, so we sat on the first row of the black people's section of the streetcar. And we rode almost every day to the end of the line and back for a nickel each. It was my favorite activity till I was old enough to play paper dolls, I guess. But Laura loved me and I loved her, and we stayed friends until she died 2 or 3 years ago. She was well educated. She had a bachelor's and a master's degree, and she ultimately became the chairman of the language department in the school district where she had worked all of her adult life. I think that was Whitehall, but it could have been Watson Chapel. She always remembered me. She came to my graduation, my wedding. She brought me baby presents when I had my children. And I knew her children and her husband, Cheney. And she was a lovely, lovely lady, and I admired her tremendously. This was not unusual for children who had nursemaids that entertained them when their parents were busy. And I always felt a close relationship with the help that helped in the house. I do remember a lot of things about those days that were not very good. I remember that when we went to Little Rock to shop, M.M. Cone had 2 water fountains. One was for whites and one was for blacks. And I liked the one for blacks best because it was lower and I could reach it sooner. So that was the reason I liked to drink out of the black one. That wasn't a very altruistic reason. When I went to the University of Arkansas in 1948, I was on campus when the first black student enrolled in the law school at the University of Arkansas. And there was hardly a ripple. No, there was not any demonstration or any great to-do about it at all. He just enrolled in the law school, got his law degree, and became a lawyer. And of course, to my way of thinking, that's the way it should have been. But as you know, ultimately at Central, it became such an issue that it involved the federal troops and the federal government as well as the state government, and a politician who, in my opinion, was making his life's career based on other people's disagreement to being positive about integration. And his name was Orville Faubus. Now, what else would you like to know?
How did these experiences change people you know and you?
Well, I think for me, the more I became aware of the injustices and the lack of treating everyone equally, the more I wanted it to be different. But there are many scars from that effort to integrate, and not the least of the scars is the damage it's done to the public schools. Because many white people searching for the best thing for their children assumed that that would be private school, and they took their children to private schools. And I remained a staunch public school advocate, and my children and grandchildren have all gone to public schools and have followed that belief that it's the best place to receive a good education.
Did it affect you in any choices or situations you were in later in your life?
Well, I would say that that's one big way. The public education. I worked for public education and in public education for 25 years, and I certainly was an advocate for it during all that time. So I think that was one big way, and I'd like to think that my children are a lot more liberal than I ever was even.
Are there any thoughts you would like to add in closing? Are there any questions you would like me and people my age to think about?
Do you think that your generation has become completely integrated?
Mostly, not all the way up.
It's still, how do you know the difference? I mean, how do you know they're not? The cliques are still black and white.
Well, not all of them, but most of them.
So that we've made progress, but we haven't completely.
Yeah. Made it all the way.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?